The Supreme Court has recently held in Vinita Sharma versus Rakesh Sharma that daughters, irrespective of their date of birth being prior to 2005 or later, have equal right as son in respect of Hindu joint property. Now let us understand what is an Hindu joint property and to whom this section applies and who are going to benefit out of this provision and the judgment. Under the Hindu law, property can be divided into two classes. It is one joint family property and second is a separate self-acquired property. Now a joint family property is again divided into two subdivisions which are ancestral property and separate property of coparceners which is thrown into the common coparcenary stock. Section 6 of the Hindu Succession Act applies to joint family property, which means that it has to be an ancestral property or a property of a coparcener which has been thrown into the common coparcenary stock. So let us understand what is an ancestral property to understand whom this section applies. An ancestral property is inherited from paternal ancestors, meaning thereby it has to come from father, father's father, father's father's father. A property which is acquired by a great grandfather and is passed down undivided to the next three generations up to the present generation, then such type of property is known as an ancestral property. So let us understand by this chart that what amounts to an ancestral property. As per the chart, the great grandfather, if he acquires an immovable property and that property passes down up to three generations to his son, and his great grandson, then the great grandson, that is A, acquires this ancestral property and becomes a co-partner, and in its effect will be that three male lineal descendants would become co-partners and get right on property by birth. So if A acquires the ancestral property from his great grandfather, then A's son B, B's son C, and C's son D all will acquire right by birth on this ancestral property. Now with the recent amendment of 2005, a daughter born even prior to 2005 or later, if she is alive as on 9 September 2005, she will also become a co-partner and get equal right on the ancestral property. So the criteria to ascertain whether a property is an ancestral property or not is that first, the property should be 4 generations old. Second, it should not have been divided by the users in the Hindu joint family. Third, the right to a share in ancestral or coparcenary property accrues by birth itself, unlike other forms of inheritance, where inheritance opens only on the death of the owner. Fourth, the rights in ancestral property are determined per stripes and not per capita. Let us understand this by another chart. In the chart, if A has acquired the ancestral property from his ancestors X, Y, and Z, then A's son B, C, D become co-partners and get the right on this ancestral property by birth. Even B, C, and D's children and their children will become co-partners and get the right on this ancestral property on birth. Now, how the rights are determined is if A passes away, then his share will be distributed equally amongst his son first. So B, C, and D each will get equal right of 1/3 share in A's property. Though B's son and grandchildren will also be co-partners and will be equal owners in the property, but B's children, B1, B2, and B3, will get their rights only from the 1/3 right of B in the said property. And on B's passing away, their children will get equal rights of 1/9 share in the ancestral property. And similarly, if C has only one son and C passes away, then his 1/3 share will be passed on to C1. And if D, who has two children, and if D passes away, then D's 1/3 right will be equally distributed, and his children D1 and D2 will get 1/6 share of the said property. So this is how an ancestral property rights are determined, which are according to stripes and not per capita. Another important aspect is that properties inherited from mother, grandmother, uncle, or even brother are not ancestral properties, and property inherited by will and gift also are not ancestral properties. So I hope this clarifies the concept of ancestral property and how ancestral properties are distributed as per the Mitakshara law.